straight through them today. Yep. There we go. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully I didn't speak too quickly. We're going to do a natural wedge bowl tonight. At least hopefully. I'm not sure about this blank. It's been around a bit. It's covered in plastic. It's got some cracks, a little bit of pith in it. On one side, more on the other side we need to get rid of. Well, we'll see what we can get out of it. If I sound a little bit hoarse to you, it's because I am. I've taught classes now for the last 4 days. So it's been an awful lot more talking than I'm used to. We'll use our wooden mallet to drive our live center in. Make sure the Morse taper is clean. Shove it on, tailstock up, in place. No point in the tailstock. This will be a fun piece because it's well out of balance at this point. Close up shower curtains because we will make a major mess this time around. So first order of business for me on something like this, going to look a little strange maybe. Be better if I move the camera over a little bit more. See a little bit more what we're doing. Get the bright light out of the picture. I use my thumb or a pencil. Pencil's a little safer than your thumb. What I'm looking for is, I know on this particular blank, this is the absolute highest point. So I'm going to move that around to the opposite side directly across from it and find out we are probably 3/4 to an inch away from that point. This is kind of not a good example of doing this, but I'm going to move it. This is why I don't have the live or the center in the live center, so I can manipulate it, tighten it up a little bit more, go back and see where we're at. We're closer. Might be as close as we're going to get on a blank like this because it has one high point and sort of two low points. So if I go to one of those other lower points, really looks like it still needs more taken off of it, more of it switched around. We're also on the back now, we're considerably different. So one like this, we're going to take a cut down across this way, and we may take some of this off of the back, right off the bat, to get rid of some of the mass. It's going to be pretty shallow when we're done. I also have a big crack that we're going to have to get underneath, hopefully. So that may change this thing again, once again. Oh shoot, I'll be right back. My face shield's still upstairs. Bear with me a second. Can't turn without your face shield. Now we're ready. Safety first, of course. Make sure everything's tight. I'm actually going to use a 5/8 inch gouge a little bit to get started tonight. Safe speed, 0. Bring the speed up. So you make sure. I was spinning it around. I want to get as close to this furthest out point in this case as I can. Somewhat. Make sure everything's good and tight. because we're going to have some. One of the reasons I'm using the bigger gouge right off the bat because I'm going to get a lot of tool overhang really quickly. So we're going to stand off to the side. We're looking for our vibration, which is going to be very slow. So they're going to let me do about 600 RPM, something like that. So that means our mentality is going to have to be that we have to go very slow because somewhere over here, there's some big areas that's sticking out. Getting too big of a cut. Back off, reestablish another cut. Probably going to have to do that a second time. Also may have to, may actually have to change belts. Because on the high speed belt, it's not going to have horsepower at these low speeds, which sort of what's going to happen here, there. We might as well just take the time out. It only takes a second or two to change it. We'll just change it back down to having tons of the full horsepower of the motor, put it that way, versus speed. Because right at this present time, we don't necessarily need the speed. We need horsepower to be able to plow through some of this material. Now I have to reestablish where we're at on the vibration. Just somewhere up about there. I'm still taking a pretty big chunk out here at the end. I didn't necessarily do a bang up job when I cut the blank as far as roundness. I probably could have, should have went back and recut it before I even started tonight. It's also a good thing to be able to show that it doesn't have to be round, because we're going to make it round. This will probably actually take me a little bit longer than it would have if I would have recut it. I would say by the looks of it, I probably had a wide bandsaw blade on, and I was too lazy to change it. When I cut bulb length, it's generally a 3/8 inch blade. I'm also tapering it a little bit down towards the bottom. It's going to help me get rid of some of the material that's got to go away anyhow. I'm going to reduce the weight as much as I can, as quick as I can, so that we can get it into a balance, so that we can get our speed up, because it is a natural edge. We will need some speed to be able to cut the wings easily. So that crack is very, very deep. I hope it's not as deep as I think it could possibly be. That sucker could go in there quite ways. That's too big. I'm gonna venture a guess and say we're going to be taking at least a 1/2 inch diameter off of this thing. Do I have one that's a point? Close to a point. So I could use something small and pointy to go down in there. Oh my goodness. It is further down than what I thought. I was hoping for. That's the best end of 3/4 of an inch down. Okay. Not what I was hoping for, planning for, but we'll just have to deal with it. Scenario of you just take the material off. We're going to go a little ways. It does have some nice character to it in some ways, but we'll see. And we stop to move our tool rest closer. We're going to check it, make sure we're not going to hit anything before we turn it on. Doesn't work very well if you do. So now I can go out here and find this edge. Now that I tapered that in, I don't have to go the whole way to the end. At least not at the moment. Also getting into the round, and even at 600 RPMs, I can still take a good healthy cut. May not be the cleanest cut in the world, but the crack's disappearing. Oh no, that's another crack. The big one's not disappearing very quickly. That's what I was afraid of, but we'll deal with it. Be a good time to check our points, our high points versus our low points. So that's the medium one, that's the low one. We probably still could turn it more in that direction. I think at this point, I think it'll save me time and energy a little bit. I'm going to come back around here to the side, because this is the distance there to there to the lowest point is probably almost a solid inch. So I'm going to get rid of some of this material up here so that I'm not fighting with it so much. I could do my simple little back and forth cut. It also just goes straight into it. It's going to be a little harder going straight into it at that point because it's only a very much of an interrupted cut. Interrupted, like, for the most part out here, this part is probably once every revolution it's touching. So it does become a little bit more bouncy. I would slow down a little bit, take a little bit more time at it. I could stop it from bouncing. Ideally, that's what we would want to do. It did not have a date on the bottom on this bowl at all, which is not a good thing, because I really don't know how old it is. I know it wasn't growing any mold, because if you put the plastic wrap around them like that, it does slow the drying process down considerably and quickly. But it also means that it keeps the moisture in there, and they can start to get mold and things like that on them. This point out here, if I could get a flat area, if flattish area, I could always turn the tool over and go towards center and cut across that way. This is sort of what I teach in my classes. You also have to remember we're doing something that's way out of round like, or way out of whack like that. It also means that you're running into a lot of end grain. So it's really almost better off to take the little bites. My adventure of guess would say I can bring the speed up, at least get another 100 RPMs or so out of it. Every little bit will help to make it more susceptible to being cut. At this point, I don't need it to be totally flat in there. I just wanted to get rid of some of this bulk because we're still not through on the bottom by any means. It does have some figure in it, which is, it is, I think from where I could see it, it was, I don't know how they ever onto that camera because it wouldn't make sense at this point. I'll show you a little bit later. There is, I think this was actually taken out of a crotch piece. So there is some crotch figure in it, I think, in the bottom. Um, Depending on where we get to out here, diameter wise, and getting rid of things that we don't want in there. There's a pith. That pith also comes out over in that area there. So we should be able to easily get rid of that by making our bowl shape. But we have to get rid of these cracks first. I don't like screwing around with them. I've sort of gotten to the point where I don't do that very often. Theoretically, if I wanted to, I could stop here and use some hot glue and build a little dam out around here and fill that with epoxy. And you could possibly do the same thing with that one. It does have some bug holes in it too. But anymore, I sort of have a tendency just to get with some other a different philosophy of let's just get rid of any and all defects in the wood. It's easier and nicer to start with clean wood. At this point, all my cuts are still coming from the top to the bottom. Even though I saw that it's starting to, it's sort of tearing up some grain a little bit. At this point, I'm not concerned about that at all. I'm more concerned right now to stay out of the line of fire of it, because we don't know where that crack goes. I also want to limit the number of cuts that are going to come in the other direction. There'll be plenty of them coming the other direction, but when you're working with natural edge, you want the least amount of cuts on this bark area. That will give you the most success. We're getting shallower, not by much. That one's actually opening up. So we're just going to keep on going. Keep making it smaller in diameter. It is what it is. It's a piece of free firewood, so instead of having a 12-inch bowl, if we have a 9 or 10-inch bowl, or even an 8-inch bowl that's clean, would be much better than having a bowl with a giant-sized crack in it that inevitably somewhere along the line, it will continue to crack. A little natural edge bowl. Yeah, it should have been a big natural edge bowl, but there's a big hairy crack in it, so we're going to shrink her down a bit. We're actually going to shrink it up quite a bit because the crack is very deep. That crack's getting bigger. This one's starting to shrink. Get my little thing and see. I could use a toothpick. That would be narrow enough. It was probably 3/4 of an inch deep when I started. This toothpick might not be the good thing. It's still too big. We still gotta take more. Some of that will go away as we make the curve, but I'm gonna get down. Definitely gonna get lower than that before we make the curve. We'll make a couple more cuts across there. Not done a very good job cutting a straight line tonight, but it doesn't really matter. That one's going to go away fairly quickly, I think. If that one is the bigger concern. It's a nice piece of cherry. It does have some figure in it. I'm pretty sure that it is definitely is a crotch piece, or was a crotch piece. Definitely in control when we go off the end. It's shrinking more. I think at that point, I think now we're just going to decide whether we're going to move this, manipulate this space around a little bit more. And I think the answer to that question is maybe. Might kind of look interesting as a sitting on a table to have a really high point back here to two lower points up here. It's just going to mean we're going to have to do our work a little bit slower than what I'm going to move it one more time. And then we'll make one or two more cuts up across from the top down. And then we'll go from there. Now we made it all wonky. So make a cut and see whether, I have a tendency not, from time to time, not actually to move it in the right direction. So we'll see. Yep, that should be good. Crack shrinking. Oh no, still keep looking at the wrong one. Alright, well, I think I'm happy with the height. Yeah, we got closer. Still not perfect. It's really kind of hard to get them truly perfect in that case. I think we're close enough. We can shrink it down more yet once we get there. It still does have some bug infestation on the couple places along the bark. So that'll have to go eventually. I think that'll work. So You'd be able to go from there over to there. Maybe move that back a little bit. This needs to move a bit. Be able to see what we're doing on there. There we go. Okay. This stuff is fairly dry. It's kind of dusty. Might have to turn the dust collector on even at that rate. I've sucked enough dust the last couple of days to last me a while. I also think I'm going to switch to my shorter tool rest because I don't really need the big long distance. This is where I stay in the proper zone on the tool rest. Now I can turn it on a little bit of an angle. I'm going to get rid of this corner and then flatten everything out on the bottom. We can go a little bit further on an angle. Always going to make sure we spin and make sure nothing's going to hit. Because it's all kind of wonky now on the bottom again. But we'll get rid of that in a hurry. Or semi-hurry. It actually sort of picked up a little bit more vibration. It's probably because, well, we're going to have vibration the whole way through this one. As long as it's not ridiculous, we'll be good. I'm going to finish cleaning up in here. So I don't think we're going to move it anymore. If I engage the tool, swing my hip. Slowly in here because it's moving slower. Clean off some of this bumpiness. Cutting out, it's flat. Yep. Yeah, there's crotch in there. That's some feather figure right there. It probably will disappear. Most likely. Looks like it only goes up into that area. So it probably will not end up in the bottom of the bowl because we will probably shrink this in height anyhow. I want to keep it that it's sort of properly sized, I guess you would want to call it. And go pretty close to the tool rest on that in that zone. Because we know it's round, we're going to remove a lot of material quickly on that. That was the 5/8 bowl gouge. I'm going to switch back to my 1/2 inch, is what I normally use a lot more of. Doesn't mean it won't take the big cut like the other one. This stuff is fairly dry. I'm just going to keep on trying to get a little bit more speed, a little bit more speed. Makes my cut more efficient. Allows me to do my work a little quicker. Start to run the angle up higher yet. A little bit higher. It's all nice and clean wood. Still pith there. Still one little one there. Where was the other end of that big one? Should be over. Maybe not. Maybe I ought to get rid of it. Little one there. Still another one there. Oh, that could be the same one. If I get in the right angle. That was some sort of a branch that was coming out. So we know we got to get up in that closer to that area to get rid of all that. That's a place it will crack. Still some of the big cracks in there, unfortunately. And we're too thick. We're probably, I bet we're close to 6 inches there, 5 inches there, which would be entirely too much because we're probably down in the 9 inch category. Maybe less than that even. Maybe 8 inch category. So maximum depth should be about 4. So definitely we're going to take more material off. It's going to look a little funky. We may have to reset the live center to do that, to get back down thinner than what it is. I can continue working on this one. Like the curve. Stop and move the tool rest. Crack down in that area. There's still part of that little bit of pith left, so that's going to go away. Tiny bit there, that goes away. Our only concern that's left is that crack up there. Not quite sure why that wants to be noisy tonight. There's something laying somewhere that's rattling. They keep sneaking back on the curve. Able to sneak the speed up a little bit. If you saw me move my left hand, it's because I did that. Let's do it this way. I want to cooperate that way, so nothing says we can't do a sort of a draw cut on it. Just not going to be a clean cut when you do that. It is definitely an efficient material remover. of give me the idea of where we're going to be. Very, very aggressive cut, terrible finish cut. It's not a finish cut, it's a bulk removal cut. Something I don't even remotely try and teach because it can be very aggressive. It's generally very aggressive, put it that way. So are we thin enough yet? Nope. It would be getting closer, but won't let me get to where I'd like it to get. But little vibration's one thing, a whole lot's another. So, 10 foot. Still working on just a general shape. I'm thinking the foot of this piece is going to be somewhere in that area, that size. So we can still sneak around here and do a bevel supported cut. And we'll clean it up, make it look nice. We can work on our curve. This time we should be able to get pretty close to the top. I don't want the top to be straight. I want this to be a curve the whole way from the bottom to the top, which you see I stopped short of the top because that's where the curve, in my mind, that's where the curve is going. So we still need to reduce down here to make that curve. That crack's still there. I think that was that must have been, that's the big crack. So we're almost to the bottom of that. It is a piece of firewood. Yes, I'm throwing a lot of chips on the floor. This is what it's all about. It's ending up with the sort of the proper size, proper proportions, I guess you'd say. Bug hole, another bug hole, and a crack. So probably the other thing that would probably help a little bit. Just trying, my brain's rattling a little bit. Another rattle would be saying, oh, I don't have any jaws. I'd have to change jaws on my small chuck. And we may do that. I may just put this as sort of a tenant right now. Remove some of this. If I'm really fortunate, and I should be able to remove all this down to a little bit and knock that off or cut it off. And just bring our tailstock back up into it here without losing a whole bunch of area. The other thing I could do, if I grab this in a chuck right now, I could flip it around and I could cut a recess down in there, but I'd have to switch jaws so I could get my shark jaws to be able to get down far enough and actually be able to um, grab it up there that I wouldn't really wouldn't have a need for any tailstock support. Don't normally do that on a natural edge, but it'd be worth a try. It's something different. take this down smaller. I do need a sort of clean tenon. That's a tenon that's bigger than, much bigger than those bat jaws there, right? Yes. So let's take it down a little closer to the size of jaws that I know that I have. That's going to grab it nicely. Not really concerned that it's going to leave jaw marks now. Just have to clean that up a bit with the spindle gouge. I do have out. Well, some of my vibration is right there because it's probably not sitting flat in there. I think we'll get rid of more of this. This is a bit on the questionable side to do it that way. Why stop? That's why one of the reasons is vibration. There's space over here. There's not space over there. I definitely don't really want to try and cut that super thin. Would be a little better if it was a little straighter on the bottom, maybe. Just switch over to the spindle gouge, and we'll get in there a little closer to the area that we want. Because if this breaks, something's not going to be happy. So in other words, it's going to go flying. And we don't necessarily want to do that. So it's just much safer to sort of give it that groove, little groove in there. My little flush trimming saw will take that off in a hurry. Well, this is the big flush trimming saw, but either way, let's take it off nice and quick. I slowly spin it as I go. Let's keep a halfway straight line. And there we are, the whole way off. So now if we're lucky, better to be lucky than good any day of the week, I should be able to back the top. There we go. That gives you an idea how hard I've driven those 4 prongs in there that it did not move. So we should be still in the same balance point as what we were earlier. So we could check it. Not quite, but close enough. We'll just retrue things up and we'll be good. But now it's got a better holding point for our live center. Question is, do I want to change? I'm not sure, since this is kind of really a funky edge, funky section up here. I think I'll just keep going like I would normally do. I don't know that it's the problem with using the shark jaws, even though they're long. I'm going to have to go fairly deep, and it could have the body of the chuck trying to hit on that top face. So I think we'll just keep going the way we're going. Makes it a little bit different. Of course, now we get to retrue it up, which is all right because we still didn't have our shape that we wanted. Cut started to get a little too big. Nothing wrong with stop and reset. Get to the top. Top is definitely going to take more patience at the lower RPMs. It's going to show you whether you're pushing into the wood or whether you're gliding along it. If we got a whole bunch of bounce up here, we know that we're pushing in rather than gliding along. We have to go nice and slow. In this case, this thing is such out of whack at the top. And still more bug holes. It's got a very low percentage of bark staying on probably because of that. But we're getting there on our shape. I can see by that from there we're going to reduce the thickness of it again. We're going to start out with a 10-inch bowl and end up with a 7-inch bowl, but it's only a piece of wood. It does grow on trees, so I'd rather have a nice, pleasing shape when I'm done and worry about how much wood I just wasted. So that we know for sure we're going to do that. So let's just take some more off. Give myself some room to move. That tenant area was no longer valid anyhow. And we're going to be back to creating another curve from there to there. That should be the last time, I think. I think we're getting there. Probably somewhere in the neighborhood. We're getting there. Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 inches deep. Something like that. Definitely don't want it deep because it's not going to look right if it is deep. Bugs went right underneath that bark in that section. That'll be kind of disappointing, discouraging, because that'll be a place the bark will start to come off, I'm sure. It feels like it's pretty solid, but it's solid right up until we take more off on the inside. Eventually. Still don't want to. This sort of balances out up there on the high end, but for right now, we'll just keep it on the lower end. Get rid of the corner again. Not a pretty cut, I'll guarantee you that. But it does remove a lot of material in a big hurry. If I was being a little nicer and went a little slower, it wouldn't be. At this point, I'm just more interested in getting close to the final shape that I want as quickly as I can, because I'm not a patient person. I think we're probably getting close to the right area anyhow, I think. Now I can go back and use my bevel supported cut. take another eighth of an inch or so off right there. Trying to get our curve to where we want it. And run our curve the whole way to the top. It's the challenging part up there. There's one point, and I probably didn't touch it again. Yep, right there. One little point that's way out beyond the rest. We're going to get it to where we want it, and then I'm going to put up with the vibration so that I can speed it up at that point. There's still another little crack. A little one like that I could live with. I think we're down into the right area as far as height goes. I think. Nothing's still set, set in stone as far as that goes. We can change things up until almost the very last second. So that pin is definitely bigger than what, not by much. It's really probably about the size of the foot that we're going to leave on it. Thereabouts. Just, just need to be a little bit more careful. Because you got to remember, this area here is the only thing that's touching when it comes around. It's also why it's becoming more difficult to cut it cleanly up there. And I'm not going at the pace that I should be. I'm going too fast. That's why it's wanting to tear it up. So I have two choices. Either I speed the lathe up, which will probably be my first choice, or I slow down the process, slow down my cut. Other than that, tiny bit there. Other than that, it's pretty much cleanly cut, which is what we're after, of course, always. By the looks of it, I'd say we're definitely losing all the figure. The only real question is, can we maintain some bark till the end? Chances are probably going to be slim to that, because if them bugs were in there, they probably went straight towards the center. There's a pretty good size hole there as well. Still not totally happy with my shape. Yeah. So if I drop this in a little bit more, curve it around, sort of try and tuck it underneath a little bit. Take hardly anything off up here. .700 RPMs, it's not going to cooperate up there. And live with that vibration for a second so I can cut this clean. Right straight off the end. Hopefully we don't need a giant sized chunk of bark when I do it. We didn't, so that was a plus. But I should have been able to. Where's my high point there? So now I was able to cut that clean, at least cleaner. Probably sandable clean right there. A little bit of disturbed grain, but not a lot. So I think that's going to work. I think. Yeah. I'll reduce this a bit. I don't need all of that. Now we can finalize where our tenant's going to be. And we'll get it down to the right size so that I can, pretty sure this piece is dry enough to actually turn it and finish it all in one shot, I think. I use my parting tool, it's rounded a bit of an angle. Give it a little bit of a foot. A nice gripping area. I don't really necessarily need. I need a registration point place for the chuck, but I don't need that big of an area. Once again, I can cut a little bit more out of there. Clean our tenon up with the spindle gouge. We've got tiny little area, well, I don't even need that flat. I just need a registration point because I use dovetail jaws, which will make that simple, easy and simple. If you're using other types of jaws, it might not work so well for you. Razor blade goes away. Create a little bit of a rounded foot in both directions. Hopefully, yes, right. Righto, Joe. Okay, the spindle gouge doesn't necessarily give me what I'm looking for in there as far as finish goes, so I will either be a little nicer, drop it down a little lower, create more of a shear scrape right in there, or we will. Gave me really nice fine shavings, but the shavings could even be finer than that for sure. Still a little bit of disturbed area in there. I think we can live with that. A little bit up there. I think we'll get go ahead and give it a sand and see. Definitely a place where we're going to start with 120 because there is a little bit of disturbed grain. It's probably more than enough disturbed to not start at 120. Bring our dust collection over. Turn the noisemaker on. I'm going to slow the speed down a bit. Also going to turn in reverse at this point. It does a better job for me for the dust collection. As you can see, it's all going straight into the hose. At this point, we can go back strictly overhead. You'll get a better view, a little closer view maybe. There we go. I'm going to speed up this a little bit more because once again, we're standing over this area that's hitting and missing. So if we can narrow the gap, so to speak, a little bit, it'll help us. The other thing we may want to do with this, although it is going pretty good, if I run my finger up across there, it still sort of has a little bit of a sloped area. So if I just spin this with my left hand, holding the sander on my right hand and my body, I can sort of flatten that out up in that area a little bit. It just makes it a little easier sanding wise. And now we have it flat. Got rid of that little lip that was sticking up, well, almost all of it. It's just a nice, simple way of doing it. You could even possibly get in along this little foot area a little bit better too by doing it by hand. because these are never spinning totally round, totally true. So that helps us out. So we're done with 120 on the 150. Probably can do the same thing, kind of rinse and repeat before I move on. This area in here by the foot will end up getting sanded with heat sandpaper. This area sands very nice, very easy. Wipe off the dirt. So that was 180. Go to 220. Yeah, at least it sands like there's very little to no moisture left in it, or not very much moisture anyhow, put it that way. Stupid bug holes. That bark will not stay on. I'm almost guaranteed of that. Still a tiny little crack there, but I'm gonna leave that one alone. A lot of people feel that gives it a little character. That piece of 320 is about seen its better days. Not cutting very well. Sandpaper's like our cutting tools. They don't last forever. If they're dull, it's dull. Like that is right there. So I'll just get fresh ones. The higher grits wear out quicker than the lower grits. So when you're buying these 3-inch disc or whatever size you chose to use, it's always best to buy a little bit extra of the finer grits because they do not last as long. At least in my experience, they don't last as long. So I'm going to go right back to 320 because I wasn't happy with the amount of dust that was coming off of it. There we go. Remember, I just sanded it to 320 and hardly got any dust, and it looked like it was polishing the surface. And that's sort of what it was doing. It was polishing rather than sanding, which I wanted to sand. So that was 320, 400. World of difference on how much dust is coming off. Doesn't take very long. All we're doing is refining the scratches. I'll stop there for a second at 400 because I need to go back into this area along this foot. I probably could have, should have did this before I did the power sanding a lot of times because I'm going to start back at 180 grit to get rid of anything that's disturbed in this area. And we'll go right straight through the grits, right on up to the same thing we just did. So 180, 220, 320. I'll run that sandpaper over something round to break some of the glue particles in between it. Get in there nice and tight to that foot. It's kind of the only downfall of doing this style of foot on a piece is that it's a little bit harder to sand down in this area. But it gives it, to me, it gives it a much nicer look. So to me, it's worth the extra little bit of effort. We just need to keep in mind we got to keep the sandpaper moving so we don't put all kind of little radial lines in there. And we'll go the whole way to 600 in this fashion. Gonna sand the outside one more time, which will be with 600. And now, and at that rate, it will be ready to actually put a finish on the outside. If we wanted to, we could probably do it right now. There's a tiny bit, little bit in there that I missed, but only in one little area. It's underneath, so most people would never see that, except another wood turner that really wants to look at their work really hard. That should be that. Ready for a bit of finish on the outside. Which we're not going to do till we do the inside. Now we're going to remove the bulk of this down to a little bit of nothingness. We'll do the same thing we just did a little bit ago. We'll take it down to a smaller, a much, much smaller diameter, and then we will cut it with the saw. This time, because we've already looked at and sort of inspected the material, I will probably go a little bit smaller than what I did the first time. We're down to maybe a half an inch in there. Spindle guide comes out. Make this as clean as possible. Not that I'm super concerned about that, because I do have a vacuum chuck system, so when it comes right down to that, we will actually do it on the vacuum chuck for that last little bit. Eventually, just give myself a nice, easy place to cut it off, out and away a little bit. Right now, we're done with you. And turn that off. Listened to enough noise for the last 4 days. It's amazing that I don't have one. I probably should in some aspects. Is those air filter things that you can buy that are all kind of different manufacturers that you could put in your shop to help keep the dust at bay. But when you're running two of them all day long and they're sort of directly over your head in that case, they're kind of noisy. enough noise to make you have to talk louder to talk to people. So, I mean, they're a good thing in one aspect, and the other aspect, as you can see, I was able to remove the live center and it didn't fall off. So a little wiggle when it comes off. Better it falls on the ground and sticking in my fingers. Didn't have quite the right hold on it. A nice pile, little pile of chips at my feet. I'm gonna move it a little bit over. And then we're on to our chuck. Should be the 3-inch jaws. Clean the face, clean the back. Start it by hand. In my case, the hand wheel's behind it, so one last little snap. We're in good shape. Grain is running in this direction. So I'm going to put that in between the jaws, facing in that direction. And if we did everything right, we should be down to very small, smaller than what I really intended for. The jaws are almost closed. There's barely any gap in there, which I'm comfortable with that. I'll guarantee you that is not going to leave any marks behind. And it's still more than strong enough hold to do what we need to do. And so now we're going to be strictly to the inside. Can move this around a little bit, get a little bit closer for you. Handle should still go underneath. We should be in good shape, the shape we're in. So this one you got to be a little bit careful, more so with this one than other ones. You'll bring it in on a bit of an angle right off the bat. Not too much of an angle. That's going to go away in a hurry. And there. We definitely have to be concerned on where it's hitting, where it could hit over here. It could also hit my banjo below. Generally, for me, it'll hit the banjo below. Go back to our swept back grind for a little bit. For the most part on the outside, we used all the left side of the gouge. So now I'm going to switch over to the right side. So I don't need to go back and sharpen at this point. Not that it wouldn't be a perfectly bad idea. I am going to turn the dust collector on as long, yeah, it's not in the picture. I started to do this more and more on a regular basis. It helps because all these chips are going to my right. There's a wall here, and there's also a space for them to go down beside this cabinet that's underneath my lathe, which is kind of a pain. We change something drastic, we slow the speed down, we bring our speed back up to where we pick up vibration. I know from before we're not going to get through the vibration yet. We will be able to eventually. Let's start in the middle. I don't drill a depth hole. I'm going to sort of drill a depth hole, or I'm going to come in on an angle. For me versus what I would teach somebody is I'm going to come in sort of a straight angle in, just to get rid of some material, leaving steps in there each and every time. If I push too hard, like I sort it down, it wants to bounce around because this is still very much an interrupted cutout here. But hopefully, I get more of this out of here. Should be able to pick the speed up considerably. Maybe even to the point of I think we'll just listen to the motor whine a little bit. I still got some vibration. The lathe's not trying to walk across the floor or anything like that. I'm gonna leave it at that. Need a little bit more room. My steps are there. I can literally drop back one of the steps and go from there. We're going to stop and look, see what we're doing, how we're doing. You see, we removed material here, but we still haven't touched over here yet. It's going to be a little while before we get down to that level. We're down to about a half an inch, maybe 5/8. Now's the time to determine how thin you want to go, which I probably want another 1/8 of an inch or so off of that. I'm going to cheat because I have multiple gouges, multiple bulb gouges. Right now I switched over to sort of the same 60 degrees. It's just a straight wing and it's sharp. It's not has not touched a piece of wood right now, that yet. So my speed's back where it's at. So now I can make nice, clean cuts down along there. Very slow, methodical. Still going to be a little fighty down below because it's still hitting air. Right now, I'm only concerned about this top 3/4 to 1 inch down. When they're this far out of whack, it becomes a little bit of an issue. I'm barely even below the bark. So I'm going to have to remove some more of this material down in this area. And just in this area, probably from here out, leaving the center, or at least quite a bit of the center, so that I have support out here so I can cut easier. I'm going to maintain that edge, the sharp edge on that tool, switch back to the other one. And I'm going to get rid of a little bit more material. Once again, I leave the steps. It means I don't have to think about that process of opening and closing the flute. Because I have a step for it, it will not skate back, or any such thing as that. We also could make the steps going the other way, a little bit, somewhat, leaving bulk of the material in the middle. Really, what I was really trying to do was get down to solid wood, which we're almost there. Might as well go a little deeper and get this all into solid wood. See whether this bark is going to go flying for one. At this point, we can even start to curve it a little bit if we wanted to. Now we should be able to go back to a sharp gouge and back up here. And maybe make one fine little cut, pick up the cut on that edge. A nice light cut. My body is in a position now that I'm looking on the right side and left side at the same time. I know that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but if I'm sort of sideways, I don't need to see what the gouge is doing. Actually, the wonders of doing things with an interrupted cut like that, I don't need to look around the corner. If I look straight ahead, there's enough airspace in between that I can see what the gouge is doing as well as look on those sides at one time. It's kind of interesting because people don't understand that at all. Looks like there's a little bit of disturbed area there. So we might have to do another cut down through there. Still quite bouncy. gonna have a. That's interesting. That's one of them areas that might actually would be almost tempting. I'd have to switch it back overhead. There's actually a hole right in this area. Might be able to see it. Right there where the worms were at and went through this bark. So it's gonna leave a if it cooperates, which probably is likely not to, but it also left a hole the whole way through. So it's gonna be like a little bridge of bark going across there. Might look kind of interesting, but somebody will be disappointed if they purchase it because it definitely will eventually break. So we're just going to keep along the same lines. I'm going to remove some more material out here carefully, of course, because we don't want to run into that big wall. Because we can actually work this a long ways down before we remove that center portion. So now we're going to do the nice light cut. Find our bevel, find the cut. Just wiggling the handle around so we have tips going over it. And we go back down into that region down in here. And now we're on solid wood, so there's no issue of whether it's going to cut clean or not. It still feels like it's kind of bouncing a bit more than what I'd like it to, but it's cut cleanly. If I leave some little ridges in there, that is what sandpaper is for. So I'm going to say I'm liking that, and that's good enough. So we're going to proceed on down. This time I'm going to move my tools around a little bit, try and get a little bit closer to our work, because I no longer need to come up here and pick up a cut. So I can bring this bark really close to the outside edge. We just have to keep in mind our hand has to stay on this side of the tool rest. I don't want to be lazy and get over here because it will whack me in the fingers. It will not be pleasant. I'll get rid of some of this in the middle. Making my little steps. Drill a new little bit of a hole. At that point, I'm going to take the 2 seconds out. The 20 seconds out. And I'm going to switch the belt back over. I'm running right now at about 1100 RPMs. Once we get down in that area there, it's going to want to run faster if I can. It'll make my cuts easier and more efficient. Because of the speed, not saying we couldn't do it at a slower speed, we certainly could. I just like to be a little bit more productive than that. By changing the big belt, we definitely want to crank that variable speed down considerably because where it was at would have probably been turned over at least 2500. We don't need quite that much. Use my digital calipers, check it. I'm going to say this piece is dry enough. It doesn't mean it won't move down the road, but at this point it's dry enough to be able to sand it. Probably finish it. At least that's the plan, I'll put it that way. I could even tilt tool rest in a bit farther if we wanted to. It's not going to really help us any because we're still working over in this area. I may actually have to go resharpen my 5/8 gouge, but we're going to see because we're going to get a fairly good amount of tool overhang at this point. It's not going to be so bad up in this area. When we get down a little bit further, we might have to change our thought process a little bit. Slow, bring up our speed, a little vibration at about 1100. And now we're more where I want to be. I'm at about 1600, something like that. I am used to the speed. You'll notice I'll be able to move a little bit quicker, a little bit more fluid. Leaving my steps. Wonders if having two gouges, I just switched to the other one that I know is sharp. Don't like the sand. If I can lessen my sanding, I'm going to. This is kind of going to be a rinse and repeat all the way around. Like I say, we're probably going to have to go sharpen the bigger gouge. Because that little curved area right down there is going to mean there's probably going to be easy for more tool rest or tool hanging over the tool rest. This is going to be too much. Maybe. So this is the area we got to watch. Because it's also the area where you can go through the bottom. I can't use my digital calipers while this thing is spinning for obvious reasons that it is a natural edge piece, so I would definitely be bleeding on that one. Also, when you're doing the natural edge, there's a whole pile of chips that stay right out here on this edge. So I'm checking my curve, run my fingers in and out. My curve comes down to here, and I knew I was planning on that sort of, is that it's an abrupt curve right there, that very last little bit. We're far enough in that we're going to remove the rest of this stuff in the material and then finalize our curve right down to the foot area. Put it that way, the foot area. This makes more sense. Question is, do we need our 5/8? Probably would be advantageous. Or we could even, when you're a tool collector, you can pick up some different things. I do have a bottom bowl gouge that's rather large. It's actually on a 3/4 inch bar. It wants to cut at center. So I think we'll take the rest of this center out with this guy. Because it don't care that 3 inches of overhang is there. The tool rest itself might not like it so well, but the gouge doesn't care. This is a very efficient cutting machine here, as far as that goes. I can also pick up a traditional scraper, as long as it's big enough to do that work. Using this, my hands are completely away from everything. But as you can see, I've left ridges on the bottom, which is okay, because I want to check where sort of want to check and get a feel for where my bottom is at. I could also use a pencil, put that on the center, pick a place out here, close an eye, go up here. We still have pretty much a solid 1/2 inch in the bottom, but we also don't have the curve that I want. So onward, the big tools in hand, I can still use that out in that curved area. Make that curve come down and around. Make it right straight across the center. One more time because I left a little bit of a. I didn't move quick enough around. That sort of started to dig in, leaving a little dimple sticking up is just fine and dandy. It goes away. In a hurry. Checking my curve. My curve tells me there's still a hump right in that area there. We could go one other cheap method other than the gouge. That certainly can be done with the gouge. Easy enough. Maybe should do it with the gouge. Problem is going to be is the overhang. As long as I'm gentle, I can get away with it. This one is sharp. I shouldn't be so lazy. I should just go sharpen the heavier gouge to the work. But I'm only going to take a little light cut and go very nice and slow. I'll make this one continuous curve all the way to the bottom. And at that point at the bottom on something like this, that's why I kept the depth down. Right, if I can get my fingers on it, the right area. That's how much gouge is actually hanging over the tool rest, which is actually too much. But as long as you're light on your pressure and things of that nature, you can get away with it. I wouldn't try and make any kind of heavy cut. It would be best if we picked up a bigger, thicker gouge. Yeah, to make that last little cut. I still have a ridge up here. I'm going to make another cut from up in this area here. Can't come back up here, but I can come into here. I should be able to. As long as my touch is nice and light, and not trying to force it out to the side of the wall. Because up in that region right there, it wants to talk to me. But down in here, it shouldn't. So nice, methodical, clean, crisp curve. We're going to run this to somewhere in that area there and fade away from it, which should not have left us a ridge in there, and it didn't. There's still some little areas up in there I could have did better at. That's it. It's the bottom of the bowl. And one of the things that the people sort of ask in the classes is if they've ever watched, like on YouTube or something like that, that person didn't sharpen any gouges. Well, just like me, they might have multiple gouges. And yes, I certainly, if I was using one gouge, I would have sharpened long ago. But with using two and making just the final pass with the one that's super sharp, then I get away with making it look easier than what it really could be or should be. It's just more for me. It's more the fact that I've spent the money and have multiple gouges, so it makes it a little easier. There's our lovely hole. So I'll switch to a smaller sanding disc. I'm going to have to sand more up along the edge than what necessarily would want to, but it wouldn't allow me to go at the speed that I wanted to make it easier cut up in that region. I think I'll leave the pad that's on there right now. Give that a try anyhow. Oh no, not that pad though. That's too soft. Like I say, when you're sort of a collector of things, This is a pad that has the Velcro in the middle and little rounded edges on it. So it will go around curves a little bit. It still goes on another thing. It's kind of hard on sandpaper a little bit in a way because of that. But I'm going to sand by hand without it spinning first. Probably the whole way along this natural edge part. Because that's where my cut wasn't as nice as the rest. Because the rest of it, I'm pretty sure I can cut was 150 rather than 120. We'll see. Another area of do you really try? I'm actually standing almost 3/4 of the way in anyhow. This will have to be careful sanding any way we look at it because of it not being a truly symmetrical, so to speak, natural edge. But right now, I'm more concerned about getting rid of all the pull marks, any areas that maybe weren't very cleanly cut. And it's always up along the edge. In this case, so that's pretty good. Kind of rough on the bark in there. There's not much you can do about that. Let's see if it'll let us stand out there. I'm going to slow the speed down. 700, 800 RPM, something like that. Remember, heat is not our friend. This is also not a very friendly piece to stand all the way around because of it being so uneven. I have to be really light on the touch. I'm basically just touching the sandpaper out there in that area. The middle areas and everything else that's solid, a little easier. It becomes difficult. There's nothing says that we can't sand that whole entire outside edge by hand without the machine running. We can still power sand it, and we might probably be, some ways would be better off just to do that, at least do some of it. Go around once around or something like that. Be better if I could get the sander to quit jumping around on me. That's me wiggling it in the wrong direction. A little bit different of areas in there. This shouldn't be a very long process. I think I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try changing pads and go to the bigger pad that's actually soft the whole way out. It's a much softer composite. So that was 150 that we just sanded with. Now we'll jump up a little bit to 180. See if it'll let me sand out here under power. If it will. So that's a big thing. Light touch. We don't really want a heavy touch on there anyway. Anywhere. So next is 220. Taking out the dust and debris. The debris would be any little bits of sandpaper grit that came off while we were sanding. Stays embedded into the grain. And then you go to your next grit to figure out that you have scratches that were from a previous grit, especially if it's a whole lot coarser grit. I spin this around myself. I see an area that I didn't get very well. This is along this wing that was causing the trouble all the way around. And now he says that I can't stand it by hand. Even a 320 grit, I can take out a lot of that stuff. I'm patient, work in that little area, get rid of what I saw. You won't see it on camera, but I see white streaks or white lines, so to speak. There's still one left. And that's a place that's going to show when you finish it. Like I said earlier, there's no harm in going around this outside edge without the machine running. In some ways, it's almost. Don't drop the drill on your feet. It's my Harbor Freight drill that they told me when I first started turning it. Yeah, buy them. They only last about a year or something like that. Well, that was probably the best thing that 18 years ago. As you see, it hits the floor often enough. And it's still reading. Its entire livelihood is doing just what it's doing right now. Very seldom ever need a right angle drill to drill a hole. If I do, I'll use the bigger one, which is a Makita. So if you can imagine, this thing has its only purpose in life was to sand wood trees. And the amazing part is it's still living it. It's still surviving. That was 400. One more will be 600. I'm standing inside and out to 600. And in this scenario, the thing that's touching on the pad is the either bottom or top edge, depending on which side I'm on, not the entire pad. So that's our inside ready to go. Done with our dust collection. Yeah. Missed the garbage can. So that's a bowl that's ready to finish, and we are gonna. It feels dry. The reason I say it feels dry is if you touch something, you can't touch the inside because it's still warm from sanding. But if we touch it and it doesn't feel cold to our fingers, then chances are it's probably dry. We can take it out. I thought of something the other day that would make it wouldn't have to. Normally I change jaws, but I do have one of the. This is a rubber Chucky made by Rubber Chucky. There's nothing says that I can't grab that in the center of my chuck. Let's see see how well it spins. Maybe not. It doesn't spin. Well, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to spin true. You know what I was thinking. I'm no longer going to spin it and cut anything. I am going to put a little paper towel over that because I don't want that, wherever that green material is. I don't necessarily want that on the inside of my bowl. So my fingers can cooperate here. I can hold on to that, put it in there, get somewhere in the general vicinity of the center. Put a little bit of pressure on it. Will it spin through at that point? Absolutely not. because we don't have a solid center point, so it won't even be close to being true, which don't really care. Doesn't matter. I shouldn't say don't care. It doesn't matter. I'll take my face shield off because I'll lean forward and stick my head in front of the camera. So we'll go ahead and finish this thing up. The only area I won't finish will be down here on this foot, on the bottom of this foot, because we don't have that finished, totally finished yet. So we'll put our super glue on this inside and out, leaving this area on the bottom alone. Tomorrow or another day, probably, hopefully, maybe tomorrow. I have a couple other ones to actually finish up this. This I have the opportunity to use a vacuum chuck because I have it. Wouldn't run out and spend the hundreds of dollars that it costs to get a vacuum chuck, but I already have it. I had it for other purposes other than just using it as a vacuum chuck. And I purchased that many years ago when it was probably a whole lot cheaper than it is at present day. So our finish of choice is going to be the Parfix 3408. I have a little piece of polyester felt in that paper towel, acts as a little reservoir. I'm going to start on the end grain. Really going to start up along the bark because the bark is going to soak in a whole bunch of it really quickly. But we're looking to saturate this surface because what we're after is what's sinking into the wood, and we will leave nothing left on the surface. The other downfall of doing the little bead in there, it has a tendency to be a little bit more difficult to put stuff down in there, but let gravity do the work. Put a drop or two in there, it will run the whole way around it. We also have 40 seconds to do this job, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. Not that we want to stop and have a smoke break or a coffee break or something like that, but it's more than enough time to get this on the whole way around. You'll see I'll probably go around twice because we're looking for saturation, especially along these areas here where we got the lovely little bug holes. That's going to go in there, soak right into them bug holes. It may even come out the other side if you were patient enough with it. And it will harden them up, and they shouldn't, keyword is shouldn't, come out down the road. It is dry enough to do this. You cannot do this on wood that has any real big amount of moisture in it. Also a little place right there that I kind of didn't sand as well as I could. It doesn't show up very much because there's some dark streaks in the grain right there. There also is definitely a little area that I missed a little bit. But we have it saturated pretty much. Now we're going to take a dry paper towel. Mainly, first order of business is get down here and try to get my fingernail down in that groove because I can see there's like a puddle of super glue down there. As you can see, it turned out. The rest of it we just dry off. Cherry's rather thirsty when it comes to this, so you don't want to be shy and don't skimp on it. Wipe off the excess. I'm not getting a whole lot of excess off of it. If we put enough on. Gotta watch up around the bark. Some of that bark is rough enough to sort of pull some little fibers of paper towel back off. And if it pulls the fibers off, it's going to suck it into that grain and dry in there. So I don't want the white streaks. Make sure everything's dry. Really, after anything that would possibly, any little really wet spots or something like that, that'd be sitting on the surface. Because this particular one will not self-level, so to speak. If it can't soak in, it doesn't know what to do, so it sits there on the surface and does not cooperate. So 2 little sprays of activator, 12 to 18 inches away. Use my gloved hand, remove her from our jam chuck situation. Get rid of our jam chuck. I'm going to turn around and put it right back in the chuck, and we're going to finish the inside while we're here. Now, by all rights, and I probably should do that because of the size, what it is. So grab a little bit of, I can find it easy enough and quick enough, which I should be able to. Yeah, there's a little bit of micro crystalline wax is what I have. Any kind of wax will do, pretty much. Super glue and wax are not friends. In the area that the super glue will not stick to the wax. Super glue would stick to these steel jaws. So if I put a little wax in there, inside, outside, wherever it's going to touch, give it a couple seconds to dry. Generally put the lid back on the container and put it away. Always a plus, so you don't forget. And then I'll just wipe off the excess. And it also helps to clean the jaws, which is always a good thing, because we never do that either. So now there's no fear of putting this back in, even though that super glue is there and it is not, it may be sort of set up, but this is designed to take 24 hours to cure. So we know it's not fully cured on the inside. We put it back in. We didn't make any marks the first time. We're not going to make any marks the second time. I don't need to bear down on it, as you saw. I should have wiped the outside with a paper towel. I didn't do so. I should have, because then it will get a whole bunch of the dirt out of there. Can save you a little bit of time when it comes to the buffing process, because that's what will happen after the fact. Once it cures, this will get buffed to a nice high satin, semi-gloss kind of a shine. Some of it depends on the type of wood as to how much shine it will get. Cherry will get a very nice shine to it. But think of it in the terms of one coat and done. And it's going to take me probably less than 5 minutes to actually finish a bowl as far as putting finish on. Uh, let's go back overhead once and show you what I was talking about with this. Paper towel, it's a little piece of polyester felt. Put it back in the middle, somewhere there about in the middle. Fold it over. I'm not going to make out very well doing that there. I'm going to put it back down on my bed and fold it over. Just, it makes it, gives it like a little reservoir. Also, more importantly, makes it a little less messy, because this is a very, very thin super glue, especially compared to most of them on the market. Once again, we're going to go around that bark. We're going to try and saturate that bark, even at the point of maybe even dribbling some. I don't want it to run over the top of the bark. I don't think that looks very nice. Once again, a lot of things in this world are personal preference. My preference is that bark is going to stay as a natural bark, not have any kind of a shine to it or anything like that on the outside. It's going to be sealed inside and out, but the actual bark itself, I don't put anything over top of it. It is a natural organic piece of material, and I'm going to keep it that way. I used to put some super glue on top of the bark, and I'm like, I just didn't like it. Bark is not meant to be shiny. So I would just rather leave it as its natural state. See, it's trying to pull some of them some of that paper towel off of there. So if I brush it outward rather than with it, it's pulling that away. A little bit more. Whichever side you do second will require less material because the pores are closed up from the other side. So the liquid can't run through the straws to the other side. That being said, if it would be extremely thin or very thin, as in an eighth of an inch or less, or even a quarter of an inch, you do have to be careful because there's places around the bowl or anything that could be thin enough for it to run through to the other side. Hence, that's really the reason I put the wax on the chuck draws, because there's places down in this area here where the grain is going to be running straight across and could easily come out the other side. And if the other side happens to be at your jaws, you could have a bit of an issue. No use of vacuum chucks for this product unless the only time you can get away with that is if I've done some where I did the inside. Well, I did the whole thing, but when I was on the inside, or no, yeah, I made I have a couple right over here. I made the foot too big. It left marks. So I was going to have to redo the outside anyhow, or retouch it up because of that. So went ahead and finished the inside, waited for the 24 hours, or in this case, probably almost a week for them. Now there would be no hesitation to come back up here, bring it back in centered up onto a vacuum chuck, reach through the outside, and actually finish it complete on the while it's still on the vacuum chuck, because there shouldn't be, if you did it right, there shouldn't be any place for the vacuum chuck to suck it back through, unless once again unless it's very, very thin. So that's our little natural edge. A lot smaller than what I intended it to be, but we don't have any giant size crack running down the outside. So there's the inside. This will dry dark. Some places look a little light right now. If it ends up being too light come tomorrow or another day, I could go over that just to bark again. It will cause me some aggravation when I do, because this particular product cannot go over top of itself. It will not self-level, and when it has nowhere to soak in, it just sits on the surface and it will dry quickly on itself. So if I was to go over that and be sloppy, then I would have to actually go back and re-sand a little bit of that. Not the end of the world. A little bit of 600 or even 800 grit sandpaper will peel it right back off. And a lot of people's issue would be, well, I'm sanding back over top of this, but you'll find that any imperfections in the super glue finish, you can easily just sand those little areas. When you buff it, you'll never know what area you went back and sanded. It's right there is a you won't be able to see it though. You can see maybe see if I can get it in the light right. You can see there's an area that somehow or another I managed to reach over and touch that or something. If I had a little glue on my fingers and touched that, that's an area right there that will have to be sanded a little bit. I can feel it with my finger when I run my finger over it versus everywhere else is smooth. There's another one. Whatever I did it twice. Like I say, it's not the end of the world. It sands very easily. Like I say, that will get touched with a little bit of 800 grit sandpaper. Probably the whole outside rim will get done sanded a little bit, because the bark has a tendency to sort of stand up the grain because it is very soft. But it's not the end of the world. It's actually very easy, a whole lot easier than trying to put 3 or 4 coats of some sort of a wipe-on finish on it, at least in my opinion. Um, and when you're done with it, you're still touching you're still touching a piece of wood, not a piece of um, finish over top of a piece of wood. The still will be wood to the touch. Also with cherry, it will allow it to darken rather quickly because it will darken with age anyhow. It just allows it to do it a little bit quicker than if it had a film finish on it that has some UV protectants and things like that. Anybody have any questions, comments? Otherwise, we are going to call it a day. I really should clean up, but I'm still kind of tired from the week. And it's 7:59, right on the money. Other than that, I am here on Sunday evenings at 6 o'clock. If you're watching this and like what you see and haven't subscribed, please do so. It would help an old man out a little bit. Someday I'd like to get to the 1,000 mark on YouTube. It would be a wondrous thing. But until next time, have a good week and stay safe in your shops.